Hey guys, what's happening? Welcome back. So I know that I said that I was going to go in and build videos for each car that we have around here, and I briefed on a little bit with each one in that intro video there. But the reason I wanted to kind of talk about the blue one, I got to a point where I said that we went autocrossing, and then I kind of paused and I said, where'd we go with it? And then I went right into another car. I kind of wanted to hang it up there on the car. I didn't want to get too much into it, like I said, because we're going to do a pretty fair amount of work with it over the spring here, and I knew if I was going to ramble on and do a whole big story about each car in one video that I would end up with, you know, a video that I posted that was probably going to be an hour long or something crazy like that. And actually I was pretty close to that with the amount of footage that I had recorded, because I think I started with about 55 minutes worth of video, and I had it all trimmed down to just shy of about 35 when I actually loaded the intro video. So here I'm actually going to go right into the striped car a bit. I know I had a couple guys comment on the video, wanted to know what was happening with that car in particular. So this will be the first one that I end up doing then. I was out here earlier today. I do have a video here that I'll kind of break into this a little bit, but we started earlier, and I come out here and I put some heat in the garage, so I had the Salamander run. It was pretty windy, so it wouldn't have been ideal to do much talking for a video, but I removed the underhood harness, and like I said, I did a video on that. So this is currently where the car is at. But anyway, with that car, after the autocrossing, we did good enough with it. We started drag racing, and it was the first car that I won a 12-second pass in. And if I can find the video that my buddy Josh actually had when we did that, when we went to the DSM shootout in 2016, when we actually won our first 12, and I will go ahead and add that to the video, like I said, if I could find it.
Billy Carl. So we're going to be pulling our rear safety official, and we are no longer accepting and we're going to be back at it here again in my afternoon, doing it all over again.
1290. You did it.
Forward to that,
1290. 1291 and 108.16. Nice job, Billy.
But it was actually kind of fun because we went down to the DSM shootout, and my buddy Dave, he races Street Eliminator with his, well, it was his black car back then, and we get down there, and we're going through the day. Like I said, we missed testing, ended up making that first 12 later that night, but it was crazy because it was like it was 11:55 at night. It was dark, and I mean, it was really good air for mid-August. I don't think the air could have really been much better unless it was raining, and obviously if it was raining, the racetrack wouldn't have been open, so it was pretty ideal. It was probably about 70 degrees or so. Humidity was up a little bit, but it wasn't terrible. Turbo car, it shouldn't matter anyway. We like I said, we got up there, we did the burnout. It was a solo pass. There's actually a picture on my dining room wall of that pass. There was a photographer there at the racetrack, and he got a pretty cool picture of the car launching, so we ended up buying one because it was a pretty memorable moment for me, being the first 12 I had ever gone. But that was with the car, and I think when we did it, when it dynoed the car, we made 268 horsepower and 289 foot-pounds of torque. Just a factory tune-up in the car. The only thing that I had changed was we deleted a couple codes, played with fan temps a little bit, and I upped the battery voltage from, I think, 1320 or 1340. I bumped that up to about 1420. So there was a little bit more juice flowing through the system. I don't know, obviously, if that is going to translate into a power number, but it works. But anyway, the car weighed probably, I think it was about 2575-ish without me in the car at the time that we went that 12. I think it was like a 1291 at 104, 105 maybe. So it was pretty exciting. Like I said, my buddy Eric was there. The wife was with us there. All of our friends. There's a few of them in the grandstands that got the video of it. Then we went in the back the next day in the heat of the air, and we ended up going 12,800, I think it was, or 12,800 and change. It was, again, 105 or 106 mile an hour, so we were right there. And then on Sunday we got to make another pass. We didn't really get to make a whole lot of passes at the shootout that year because there was quite a bit of breaks, so they were spending a lot of time cleaning the track, so test and tune really didn't have priority, obviously, over everybody that had paid to compete. So they had to try and get through all the racing that way. Like I said, we got 3 passes down at the shootout. All 3 of them ended up being 12s. So it's pretty exciting. And then we get the car home, and We meet some guys, and they like to go to Mexico and race. So we did a lot of that. Got a few videos that are actually up on a channel of us racing over in Mexico, and you know, there's some decent ones in there. There's one versus a turbo 35th anniversary Camaro. You know, I got him off the line a little bit, but obviously he outpowered me on the top end. There's another car on there. It was a Pro-Charged LSX Chevelle. I don't know what kind of number it made. I think he said on like a 6 or 8 pound pulley that the car actually went 135 mile an hour in the quarter. Somewhere like 1150s, 1160s, something like that. But anyway, we played with that car on the road. We played with that Camaro. There's an LS swapped S10. It was a 6-speed. There's some other videos in the channel that you can go back, or under the playlist for this one, that you can go back and view. So like I said, we did some racing. I drove it to work, had a lot of fun with the car. Changed a couple things throughout the year. After the other race, I went to a Willwood big brake kit, which we ended up pulling out of the car and selling later on. But it worked, and it was actually pretty amazing because the calipers themselves pulled, I think it was 10 pounds per side almost, just weight of the caliper. And then the rotors were 2 or 3 pounds lighter per side with another inch in diameter. So I mean, that's rotational weight's pretty big there. So we got more friction surface to grab the brakes harder, obviously, and the less rotating weight helps the car speed up and slow down a lot faster. I wouldn't say a lot, but you drive the car every day and you can feel the difference of how it actually tried to get out of its way going down the road. But so we had the big brake kit in the car. We ended up going to a What It Do track day at Ubley later in 2016, and that was a neon event. And there was a couple friends, of ours that went there that had cars that weren't neons. There was a nitrous Camaro there. I don't think the guy took his other Camaro. So the same guy has a couple cars, and another friend of ours drives one, and he drives the other ones, obviously, because you can only drive one at a time. So we take 2 or 3 cars to a race. He brings somebody with to sit in one of them. But we go to the What It Do race, and we were there with a buddy, Jay. And at the time, he had a red BWS car. I don't know if it was a turbo bay or if it was an AGP at the time. But we put the BWS in the car. He had an E85 tune, 21 pounds. Car was really heavy, though. And we ended up, he fought with that car for quite a bit that day. He was going a bunch of 13.0s, and all he wanted was a 12 out of it. And he was going like a 13.05, 13.03, 13.03, 13.07, and I mean, it was just beating the hell out of him. So I said, hey, you should let me make a pass in the car real quick, and I'll see what I can do. And he says, okay, no problem. If you go 12, I'm going to kick your ass. So I get in the car, and we go in, we do the burnout, we make the pass, and it felt pretty good. And I'm rolling back to the booth, and I'm like, man, I wonder if that actually was a 12, and I kind of would have felt bad. Well, I thought I would have felt bad. And then I grabbed the slip, and it said it was like a 1295, and I was pretty excited. I was like, man, so the car's got it. We just got to get you to work with the car a little better. Get some seat time, get your 60 foots down, work on your shifts, because obviously that's where it comes in, driving a stick car, especially front wheel drive turbo car. You got to get that 60 foot right, and then you got to stay on your shifts. That way you actually stay in power. Otherwise, you shift, you lift, you lose boost, you got to come back in. So I mean, even if it's 0.2 of a second, that's 0.2 of a second. You're not making optimal power to run the shit out of that racetrack. So we got in it. We did the 12, and we got back, and he was pretty excited. And he got in it. He tried and tried, and I think the best he had was like a 13.01. So I mean, he was there. He was fucking there. Back on track here. We go to the racetrack, and my buddy Jay's there with the red car, and he borrowed my white wheels with slicks on them so he could drive it. And at the time, because I was on the Willwood big brakes, I couldn't use the 15-inch slick, so I had to use a 16-inch tire. So I actually I have 2 pair of these Hoosier QuickTime Pro radials on an Inky 16x7. So I used a pair of those on this car. And the very first pass I made in the car, broke an axle. I tried to drive it like I do a slick car, come off the clutch way too hard. The tires bit, didn't give it all. Bam, there went the axle. Push it back, shove an axle in the damn thing. And then I start slipping it, and I'm slipping it less and slipping it less. And eventually, it was kind of crazy because it was probably 44 degrees air temperature that day. And we ended up going to 1272 at 109 miles an hour on a drag radial, a 26-inch tall drag radial. So the car had been more mile an hour and a better ET than it had ever gone on the 24.5-inch slick tire. So it was pretty exciting. So to date, that is technically the best pass that I have ever made in the car. I believe my buddy Chris, that used to actually own the car before me, Chris Hammond, I want to say that he said it was either bottom 12s or mid 11s, somewhere in that neighborhood. That was his best time in the car. And a couple years ago in passing, he had given me some shit about the car and said that the next time that I ever gave him a ride in the car, that it had better be faster than it was when he was in the car. So I'm looking forward to putting this thing back together. It's going to be a lot of fun. What it's going to end up being is it's going to have a built bottom end, a stock head with stock camshafts. It's going to have the Turbo Bay, this Turbo Bay right here, Turbo Bay V1 big neck manifold with an FM wastegate actuator. That is going to all go on this car. It's going to be on pump gas, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some nitrous behind it. I don't know exactly how much we're going to feed it. It just depends on what the number reflects based on the pills and what kind of power we can get out of it on gas alone. But the ultimate goal, I think what we're going to look for with this car is probably somewhere between 450 and 500 horsepower. On gas, I'm expecting without the nitrous to make anywhere between 3 and 325 horsepower. You know, obviously if we make more than that, it'd be pretty awesome. I'd be really happy with it, but at the same time, we're not going to be able to have this thing on a kill tune with a bunch of boost and timing, obviously because of the nitrous. So we're gonna work on a boost only tune, and then we'll pull some timing out of it while we're at the dyno, and then we'll start feeding it the nitrous and see what we come up with. But I got a box of pills. I'm gonna sit down obviously once I get this thing going together, and I will get a chart written up of different pill sizes to equate to different horsepower levels or expected horsepower levels, and then I'll just start pilling it while we're on the dyno, and we'll see what it makes. You know, we'll make sure that the AFRs are good. That's realistically the only reason I'm doing the pill calculator, is to see where the air fuel jets need to be, or the nitrous and fuel jets need to be, to make sure that our air fuel ratio is going to be okay. But you know, like I said, as far as how much power to expect once we start turning the shit on, I have no idea. We'll find out when we get there. If we can make 450 to 500 horsepower with nitrous, I won't turn the nitrous on until probably 4100, 4200 RPM. That way we're past the torque spike, and we'll probably come in with the nitrous and make somewhere hopefully around 475 to 500 foot-pounds of torque. It might make 550. If it does, I might pull some timing out of it where it makes that much torque, just to try and keep everything together. All we're going to be doing with this car is it's going to be an OEM axle or aftermarket remanufactured OEM axle. There's a difference when you look at them, you could tell. And actually I'll dig a couple out and we'll go over that here in a minute. But this one is going to have a billet input shaft. It's going to have a straight cut first and second gear. It's going to have the stock fourth gear clusters, or third and fourth gear clusters. It's going to have I think this one's going to end up having the factory third gear fork. I have a DCR on that car so far. It's been working pretty good for me. I've heard stories of, I'm just going to sit down here for a minute, but I've heard stories and seen a couple of those forks getting loose where they tie them together with the machine screws that they use to go with the billet tab into the OEM fork, because it's not technically a full billet replacement piece like the, I think Real Tune had one and P-Works had one. Performance Auto Works, I think, was what P-Works stands for. But I believe that they made full billet replacements. So if I ever run into an issue with this OEM third gear fork, we'll see what happens. If I do go get a billet fork, it probably will be one of those full billet units. That way there's no potential failure point. I don't think the failure rate is very high with the DCR fork. There's just been mentions of it having those issues. So like I said, until I have an issue with mine, I'm not going to bother changing it. It works. I'm beating the hell out of the car anyway, so it is what it is. But so it's going to be that built trans, built bottom, stock head, Turbo Bay V1 BWS with a big neck manifold, FM actuator. It's going to have a CX big core intercooler, which I'll show you that right now. So it will be that. It will have it's already got the rack from my buddy Tom, but here's intercooler we're going to use. I'm going to use the polished one. The black one is being sold to a friend of mine. There's the bottle bracket, obviously. I think we discussed that briefly in the first video. There's all my lines, solenoids, bottle opener. There's another single bottle bracket and shit in there. But this car, it's going to have the ACR seats that I took out of this one, because we're putting a Kirky in that car. But this one is going to have the ACR seats. I got to get a steering wheel for it yet. I do have a Sparkle one. It's a little bit flimsy. I'm not a huge fan. It's this one right here. But it's already set up. It's got the purge and activation switches for the nitrous, and I put them on the rope cords. And I also have connectors, so if I ever, you know, we got to service the car, we can unplug it. I'm not trying to undo and feed those switches back through. But anyway, so there is the depowered rack from my buddy Tom. Beautiful, beautiful piece. What he does is he takes them, opens them up, pulls the lines, cuts them off, fills them in, epoxies in the pressure line and return line fittings, pulls the seals off the pistons. He welds the worm gear up so it won't have the dead space in the steering wheel, because naturally with hold on a second, this damn thing. Okay, with the power steering rack, there's what they call a worm shaft, and I don't have stuff in the rafters. I'm not digging it down. So there's a worm shaft. So you have, sorry, I'm just trying to get my camera set up here. Let me do this. Try to explain this a little bit better. So with the steering rack, you have what they call a worm gear that operates the drive pinion that would move your tie rods. Now there is a shaft in the middle that's a spool valve, and there's a little bit of play in there, and I think it's like 5 to 10 degrees either direction. But what that does is it directs fluid flow in either direction when you turn the wheel before the steering column or the steering rack actually starts grabbing. So what he does is he welds that shaft, that way there's no dead spot. So you move the wheel, there's absolutely no play in there. So it's a really, really nice part what he does. We have one in that car and I really loved it. This one was actually in another friend of ours' car. When I parted that car out, I robbed it. So I got that depowered steering rack. We have just OEM lower control arms with propane bushings in them for now. Once those wear out, I am going to go ahead and use these Moog problem solver bushings. They're a bit more solid. They're not quite as good as the real tune control arm bushings, but this car is going on the road, so I don't want to put those in it and beat this thing to absolute death. But I do have those bushings in that car. This is the bushing we're going to use in this car. It's actually a pretty nice part. Like I said, it's all harder. There's not really a whole lot of rubber to it, so there really is not much room for failure without physically breaking or wearing out a metal component. So we should have much less control arm movement there. Obviously, we're trying to keep everything in check, so we're not breaking axles and stuff when we're trying to race. But I got a non-ABS master, which is actually right here. It's already got the proportioning valves in it. This is from a non-ABS four-wheel disc 2000 excuse me 2002 Dodge Neon. So we can go ahead and we can use that. You don't have to worry about changing your booster. That works. And actually took the old one out, and you could see where all the coating has been peeled off in that rust there on this booster. The rear piston seal on my master must have been leaking, or I guess I could have overfilled it, but that is the result of brake fluid on paint. So it just eats all the paint right off, takes it onto bare metal, and then it just rusts. So this car does not have AC. It already has the block-off panel. I got to clean it up. We got a little bit of shit on there from driving the car before, you know, breaking an axle and it tossed grease, and that's where all the black stuff comes from. You know, if you break the inside one, because the boot's somewhere like right in this neighborhood, and you can see where all the shit is. So that's a dirty spot. We already do have the K-frame tab. The subframe has been powder coated. My buddy Mike Myers does all my powder for me. He is HD Powder Coatings out of Seawing. He does an amazing job. Every part that we've had that has been powder coated has gone through Mike. The calipers on the white car, control arms, valve covers, subframes, control arms, motor mounts, brackets, manifolds. I mean, this guy, he does all of my stuff. He does a pretty good job. I like working with Mike. We went to school together, and it's always nice to see a friend get into business like that. And then we get into the business we're in, so we're still working together. So we were kind of friends in school a little bit, and then obviously we got into racing, and I started getting some powder work done, and we talked to him more than we ever used to. So it's kind of nice how relationships are established like that. But yeah, it was nice that I could get hooked up and start working with Mike on that. Having somebody so local and a friend of mine makes it pretty nice. I could just, you know, shoot him a text at 10 o'clock and say, hey, you know, I got a bunch of parts. You know, is the garage unlocked? I'll come over and I'll drop them off. You can shoot some color on them, let me know when they're done, and I'll come get them. No big deal. And it's never a problem. I'm not trying to meet somebody within their business hours, you know, because sometimes I get not the best schedule at work, where I end up working like a 11:30 to 8 schedule, or I work a 9 to 6:30 or something like that, where driving to Saginaw, I don't really have a whole lot of opportunity to meet somebody that has an hours of operation of 8 to 6 or something similar to that, because I got to be elsewhere. So that's where this one's going. So it's got the rack, it's got the K-frame mount, the control arms we talked about. So yeah, we got the, we went over the rack, went over the motor, went over the trans, the subframe, and all the powder work and everything that my buddy does for me. It's going to be solid motor mounts, no ABS. What I'm going to end up doing with the coilovers is, the coilovers that are currently on this car are for drag racing. They have a 6 or 8K front spring, I can't remember which right now, with a 10K rear spring, so they're pretty stiff. They're made for a front wheel drive car to drag. And I'm going to swap those with the coilovers that are currently in the white car, because there are some D2 RS coilovers in that car, and those are more of a road course, where they're 8K front, 6K rear. So we're going to swap those into the blue one, and we're going to put the BCs that are in the blue one in the white one, so that'll be on a drag suspension. The blue one here will be on an autocross suspension. We're going to set this car up to be able to drag race most of the time, but it will have the spring rates and tires and things like that, so we can go out to a road course and have some fun with some friends of ours, because we got a few of them that like to go race like Gingerman and Waterford Hills, and they do autocross and stuff like that. And we've obviously, like I said, we've autocrossed with this one before, so I'd be okay with going back. So it should be a pretty good time. We got a track day that we're looking at the end of September. I think it's September 20th, which is actually the weekend after drag week. So what I'm trying to do with this one is have this one done and ready. Oh man, I'd like to have this one drivable by June, hopefully tuned and everything by mid-July. We can go to the racetrack, make a couple passes with it, maybe check out an autocross too that's local. Make sure that everything's going to be okay with the car and it's going to handle a bit of abuse. And then I'm going to, obviously we'll start working with the tune-up on it and with the nitrous. And then drag week this year is going to be September, I think the 13th to the 18th, I believe is the dates. No, maybe it's not. Maybe it's the 14th to the 19th. Yeah, I think that might be the case. I'm trying to remember if the Waterford or the September track day that's over in Gingerman is a Saturday or a Sunday. But whatever it is, drag week is the Monday through Friday before then. So we're going to be over at 131 that Monday. They're going to be there. Everybody's going to start gathering up, I think, on Sunday. Most of the people from out of state come there. And then Monday is actually day one. So day 0, you go there. I don't know if they're going to do pre-registry or not. I got to try and get my ticket for it yet. But the goal for this car is obviously we'll be ready for that. And then we're going to be at 131 on that Monday. And then I think Tuesday is Norwalk. Wednesday is Chicago. Thursday is Byron. And Friday is 131 again. It's a combination of those 5 racetracks, but it starts and finishes at 131, which is cool because it's a really local track. So I don't really know if it could get much more local on that big of a track setting for us around this area. I've raced on Norwalk. It's a beautiful facility. I had been there many times for NHRA events before. Going there with the shootout. We've had this car there before. I haven't had that one out of the state other than Orlando yet. But we're definitely looking to maybe get into some of that, depending on what our budget looks like for traveling expenses and everything once we get going here. So we're going to do drag week with this one, and then like I said, the following weekend we have that track day at Waterford Hills that we're going to try with our friends from Origin's Garage. He's going to take his Honda out there. I don't know if the Subaru, I think that's what they're calling it anyway. It's a 2J swap WRX. It's a very cool car. I don't know if they're going to take that car there to try and run some numbers or drift with it or whatever, just have fun on the track. I'm not sure what the deal is there. But the Honda's definitely going. The striped car here would be nice if I could take it and have some fun out there. So realistically, I mean, that's pretty general plan that we have for the powertrain is, you know, we're looking to make 450 to 500 horsepower. We're probably going to end up somewhere between 475 foot-pounds of torque and 550 at the top end. Maybe, like I said, maybe more. If it makes more, like I said, we'll turn it down and keep it not so damn aggressive with the nitrous on. I also have some Tanner brackets from Tanner Malk. He makes, or Malky, I guess, if I pronounce his last name wrong, maybe he can correct me, but he makes these beautiful repair brackets for cars that tear the subframe. Because like with this one, I had turned the welder way down and I welded it so it would hold, but I'm going to go in and I'm going to clean all that up again, and I'm going to pull these studs out, and I'll show you what that is. Right, so you see right here where I welded it, it's because the sheet metal here has got pinch welds. It's just two pieces of metal, and they tear and separate. They're not very thick. You can see it, some thin shit. So you hang a big intercooler off there and it just stresses the metal. Well, it cracks here. And what these brackets do is you actually go in and you knock the studs out or pull them out, however you got to do it. And then it goes in place like this. So the upper bolt hole uses a crash bar mount right here. So that one goes in, and then you just use a sheet metal screw on the bottom. And then that is his repair bracket. I have it set on that car. And actually, I could probably just show you those. I think I do. Oh, you know what? They're not on this one because that intercooler is not mounted the same. My bad. It's actually on my black one. So you're not going to be able to see that one because it's got the stock intercooler and crash bar and everything on it with a bumper. So you're not going to be able to see that, unfortunately. But you get the idea of where that's going to be placed. I also have a Ben Zimmer battery tray. That is made for a PC680. And what I'm actually going to end up doing instead of getting the Odyssey is I'm going to put an AC Delco or Braille battery in it. Something quite a bit lighter. So the battery that we put in there, I think the Odyssey is like 13 pounds, shipping weight's 15 or something like that. But I think we weigh the battery and it's somewhere around 13 and a half. The AC Delco battery that I have in that car is a little bit smaller, but it only weighs 10 pounds and it was half the price. So we're going to do something very similar in this car. Like I said, or maybe a Braille, depending on the budget. You know, if we find some extra money or decide that I do want to splurge on a nice light battery, I will. But either way, the battery itself, going to one of those is going to save us north of 20 pounds almost, because I think the factory battery is like 30 or 32 pounds. So I mean, we're pretty close to that 20 pound threshold for less than $100, or if I bought a Braille, $200. So 20 pounds for $200 is very, very good weight savings for money. And that's one thing that people usually overlook is they go out and they'll buy a carbon fiber hood and they'll pay $600 for a hood and they'll pay $500 for a trunk. Well, the trunk's going to save you 10 to 15 pounds maybe, and then the hood, depending on which one you get, you're going to find yourself somewhere between 15 and 20 pounds weight savings there. So I mean, we're talking 40 pounds for $1,200 versus 20 for $200. So I mean, we're 1 pound per $10 versus 1 pound for $25 going to the carbon. But obviously the carbon looks good, so I mean there's justification. You know, once you get to that point, once you do this, obviously that's going to be your next direction to try and get weight out of the vehicle. But batteries are really, really commonly overlooked for weight reduction when putting a vehicle together by most people. You know, guys that get serious, you know, we think about shit like that. It's like, man, like what else can I do? You know, smaller carbon fiber mirrors, lighter wheels. You go to a Willwood rotor where you take 2 to 3 pounds out of the rotating mass there, so you find quite a bit of acceleration with good weight savings in the right places without spending a whole bunch of money. The carbon fiber fenders, I don't really know if they're a whole lot lighter. I think a buddy of mine said that it was somewhere between 1 pound and 2 pounds each, depending on who you buy the fender from. But those fenders are also like $600, so 1 pound, $600. That's not in my blood. That's quite a bit, man. I mean, if I had everything else done and I had some money that I didn't give a shit about, I might buy them so it looked better. But $600 for 2 pounds really isn't where we're looking to go. So these factory blue guys are going to look pretty good here. It does have the carbon PVO trunk. This one does have the carbon C-Bond TS style hood. This one's going to have wipers, heat. All the lights are going to work. Like I said, we're going to drive this one on the road. We're going to drag race it. We're going to autocross it. This is going to be a car that I can do literally anything I want to with, except for rally. I'm not going to do that shit. It'd be kind of cool to try and get into like some hill climb stuff too. Because up here in Michigan, they have what they call Empire Hill Climb. That's up north. And I'm thinking that, you know, if we don't get a chance to do it this year with the car, I'll definitely do it next year. Because it's something I've wanted to do for a while. I think it'd be kind of fun, you know, go out and try and stem racing with this vehicle into different platforms of racing, I guess you call it, without changing anything in the car. I mean, I'll drive it there, we'll make the race, and we'll drive it back home. The only thing that I'm ever really going to worry about changing is if we go to the racetrack, I'll put slicks on it. But other than that, whatever tire that I drive on the road with is what we're going to dip onto the racetrack when we go to Gingerman, or obviously, like I said, if we go to the Empire Hill Climb. Well, not if, but when we go to the Empire Hill Climb. So that should be a pretty good time there. I know there's a guy up north, his name's Cody Loveland, I think is his last name. He's got Love Fab. He does a lot of that stuff. He builds a hill climb, and man, this cough is killing me. But he does a lot of hill climb and track racing, and he's got some front wheel drive cars that have some insane aero, and I mean, these things are pretty much glued to the fucking road. It's crazy. You can go on Facebook and actually find him at Love Fab. But so that's really the direction that we're going to end up going with this blue one here. It should be pretty fun. Now what I'm going to do, like I said, I was out here earlier and I took that harness and stuff out, and I was videoing it while I did it. So as long as the sound is not too butched up, I'll go ahead and I'll chop it in and I'll throw it in at the end of the video here to show you guys where we're at with the car currently. So this is a video to tell you, basically kind of pick up where I left off in my intro video to the direction we're going to end up going with the car currently. I don't really think I left much out, to be honest with you. I think we pretty well got it wrapped up. We talked about the seats. It's already got the trunk. I talked about what I'm doing with the harness, the hood, the motor, the nitrous, the turbo, the transmission, steering. So yeah, I think as far as information goes, that's about all that I can really give you on this one at this point. So like I said, we're going to keep going with these videos here. I'm going to go ahead and we'll do a build video for the white one, and what I'll end up doing with the other cars we got is, because there's not really a whole lot of information or exciting information that we can talk about with the calibers and the black one and the shitty blue one that's out there. There's really not a whole lot that I can talk about that's going to make it really worth doing one video per car. So what I'll end up doing is I'll talk about those a little bit more, and then I'll put those all into either one or two different videos. I might put both of the calibers in one video, and I might put both of the neons in one video, or I might put them all in the same video. I'm not sure. It just depends on how I feel, what kind of film time I can get with what information I do have on them. But yeah, so currently, this one I'm really excited to build. It's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait for this thing. That one I was excited to build. I love driving that car. We'll go over more information on that one in another film here. But so yeah, as far as the video this week, we're just going to go with the blue car for now. And we'll see what happens throughout this week. Like I said, I got this harness out. I will go ahead and I'm going to do a little bit of video. So what I'll do is I'm going to try, I got a coffee table, it's got a glass top on it, so I'm going to do this in my living room on the floor. What I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to use a suction mount. I'm going to stick it right to the table, and then I'll try and time lapse it all so you guys can kind of see the progression of me laying the harness out, making the plan of what I'm doing with it, cutting it open, filleting it, pulling the wires, depinning all the damn connectors, and then go ahead and resheathing it with this beautiful, beautiful loom. I hope this stuff stands up to heat. I didn't really look into a whole lot. I just kind of seen what it was and how cool it was. I don't know if you can kind of see the blue fiber in the thread here because of the light reflection. But actually, here's what I'll do. I'll go ahead and I'll cut this one open real quick so we can see exactly. In here, I got a pretty go ahead and take a picture of this real quick so you can see what I'm working with here. Because what I did was I'm using one of Rob's forks for my GoPro holder. So there's the picture for that. Let me see here. So what I'll do, I'll go ahead and I'll tie that picture into the video. Just so we can kind of see exactly what it is that this stuff is without this damn reflection on it. There we go. Yes, there's Rob's beautiful, beautiful wicked fork. Only fork I'd ever install in a car, man, no question. I don't know, everybody puts posts up asking, what throwout fork? Do I buy an AGP? Do I buy a cryo fork? Do I buy a Wicked fork? Now, I do have one card. I can't remember if it's the blue one or the black one or the white one. One of them does have a P-Works cryo fork. That fork was originally installed in my black car, and I probably have 80,000 miles on it. And I think the last time that I knew which fork it was and I looked at it, there was maybe 3,000's worth of wear on it. It's a very good fork. But I love Rob's forks. I've had this fork in a couple different cars. I've installed them in all kinds of customers' cars. You could see what he does where they go in and they add a different harder material. So you're not just trying to re-harden or retreat the material that's there. You're putting a better material right on the part. And it's been an amazing fork. It's never let me down. None of the cars I've installed them in has ever had a problem. I couldn't say anything much on the P-Works fork because I don't really know people that buy them. I tried the one. This was before I knew what Wicked Racing or Wicked Performance was. That's the only reason I have it. Had I known about Rob's forks to begin with, that probably would have been the fork I went with. But here's that loom. Like I said, it might not be the easiest to see because of the reflection in the light, but it's got a blue fiber that's wound into the black. So it'll look really good on this car. I got pretty good hopes for it. So that's going to be my nightmare for this coming week, is going to be wrapping this harness, the engine harness, with that loom, and then I'm going to do the rest of the harness in black. So yeah, that's currently where we are. I got some new shrink tube, and actually I got a bunch, because this is the stuff that I use on my harnesses when I wrap them. It doesn't have the glue in it. I got to get some of the 60mm replacements here, or the 10 and 14mm replacements. I ran out of those. I don't really use these small ones because there really isn't anything I do with a single wire. But this stuff shrinks down pretty good. This is what I use at like the PCM connectors would be these. Probably these actually. By the time I get the wires pulled out for what I don't use. Service connectors, terminals, and then this stuff. If you ever have to go in and do a wiring repair, marine grade, I don't know if you could see it, but it's kind of glossy inside of there. When you heat this shit up, it's like hot glue, and it seals it, makes it a watertight connection. So that's marine grade shrink tube. Beautiful stuff. Only use that for wire repairs. This stuff I use for lumen wire. Don't use this for a wire repair because it doesn't have the glue. You could separate it, moisture get in there, corrode your connection, and then you just fucked yourself because you wasted a bunch of time. But so yeah, enough rambling on. That's a direction that we're currently going to end up going with this car. And yeah, like I said, if you guys like what you see so far with the two vlog videos that I've put up so far, go ahead, give me a like, subscribe, hit the bell and the notification thing, so when I go ahead and post the video, you'll get a notification when you send into YouTube, and you'll be able to check that out at your convenience. Thank you, and have a good one, guys.